call the town meeting back to order. And the roads are bad out there, just so you know. A couple of comments before we continue with our meeting tonight. Firstly, again, I remind you that Robert's Rules of Order forbids any member of the body from making personal attacks on another member of the body, and that will be enforced as it was last night. Secondly, to call the question to cease debate, you must be recognized, and only recognized for that purpose. You can't just call it from the floor. No problem. That's why we're all human. We all make mistakes. The late Dick Guthrie told me that's why pencils have erasers. All right. So with that in mind, let's continue. We are now reverting to Article 7. Shall the voters authorize a total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,057,681, less estimated. Do you have a point of order, sir? Mr. Busley, go ahead.
According to Vermont law, this meeting was...
Yeah, please make sure you use
according to the Vermont law and the Secretary of the State, this meeting wasn't warned properly, and therefore may not be legal, and anything voted on can be non-binding and challenged.
Thank you. And is the town attorney in the house? Is he here tonight?
He is coming, but he's just not here yet.
Okay. It is my understanding, according to legal opinions that the town has received from the town attorney, that this is a legally warned meeting, and Vermont state statutes do account for the fact that, again, as I had mentioned earlier, that we are all human. Any party which feels they want to take the result of this meeting or the fact that this meeting was held and challenge it is able to do so in Superior Court.
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. O'Donnell or Mrs. Howe, go ahead. I didn't see you over there.
Thank you. I called the Secretary of State myself. I've been in contact with VLCT as well. But the Secretary of State told me this morning, as a matter of fact, that the meeting is legally warned because Title 24, Chapter 17, 2641 clearly states, I can only quote the first part of it, so it clearly states that the legislative body will warn and post the annual town meeting. And that's what the Secretary of State said today.
On that basis, Mr. Busley, I am going to say that your point of order was not well taken, and again, you or any other member of this body have the right to challenge the outcome of this meeting and take it to court if you so choose. Thank you. Again, Article 7 reads as follows. Shall the voters authorize a total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,057,681, less estimated income of $225,000, of which $1,674,877.02 to be raised by taxes, $70,000 by non-tax revenue, and $87,803.99 by prior year surplus. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. Harris.
I move the town authorize a total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,057,681, less estimated income of $225,000, of which $1,674,877.02 will be raised by taxes, $70,000 by non-tax revenues, and $87,803.99 by prior year surplus.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the town authorize a total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,057,681, less estimated income of $225,000, of which 1,674,600, excuse me, I'm having trouble reading the copied portion here. All right, so of which 1,674,877.02 to be raised by taxes, 70,000 by non-tax revenue, $87,803.99 by prior year surplus. Mrs. Harris, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, but I'd like Janet Rasmussen too.
The chair recognizes Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. We have some slides, there's some budget slides. It's not the complete budget on slides, but there are some slides that we'll start with now. The first one, I believe, is the select board. It's just a comparison of last year versus this year. Oh, okay. Now we're on the select board slide. All of these are last year's budget, or the budget year that we're in currently, and the ones that we're proposing for the year that begins July 1st. The select board budget is the same, 5 members, $10,000 for all 5 members. The next slide is the proposal for the town administrator. I'll just read you what the slide says in case you can't see it. It will be for a full-time, 40-hour compensation, $50,000 plus benefits job. The select board will set up an external hiring committee consisting of 2 select board members and 3 community participants. A job description will be created using the VLCT suggested job description as a model, and the committee will recommend top candidates to the select board for final decision. Moving on, if there's no discussion. We are now at the town clerk's office, and you'll note that with the exception of the select board salaries, all of the salary numbers look as though they've gone down year over year, and they have not gone down. It's just there's 1 fewer week in the year.
Mrs. Rasmussen, I just want to make sure that the body knows you'll be allowed to make your presentation first, then they can question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry
Thank
about that.
Speak up, please.
Sure. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so all of the salary items with the exception of the select board, which is a stipend, it appears as though the salaries have gone down, but they've not. There's just 1 fewer salary week in the year in 15-16 than there was in 14-15. So substantially, the clerk's salary stays the same, the assistant clerk stays the same, and the entire budget is the same. It just looks like it's a little bit less. Now we move to the town treasurer's office. That has changed since Cindy is now our treasurer. Cindy Turnley is now our treasurer, and Sally Brassner is now our assistant treasurer. Those numbers have gone down. The numbers for 15-16 represent the new salary levels, and obviously the total represents the new total. The listers, we have moved the listers. Last year we raised the listers up to 60 hours from 45. This year we put them back to 45 from 60. So the salary numbers represent 45 total hours. And, excuse me, the reason we are still doing 45 hours is because there are still a couple of contracts that need to be negotiated. We're looking at a long-term agreement with Velco, hopefully, and a long-term agreement with Entergy. Now, the next slide represents the number of hours that the listers recommended to the select board for each one of the listers. So that is the hourly breakdown that was given to us by the listers during our budget meetings. Buildings and grounds is the next category. I think that's all. The maintenance foreman's salary is going down because we've hired a new maintenance foreman whose salary is on the grid is less than the person who he's replaced. Highway and garage is all actually equal to what it was last year, just again with the one fewer week in the year, except for the part-time operator who it was recommended to us by the road commissioner, whose salary is going from $9,000 to $7,000. So that is actually coming in a little bit less. The sheriff's contracted services, we were at $231,634 last year, and this year Sheriff Clark gave us notice that there was a 1% increase on that 24/7 coverage, which comes out to $233,950. The recreation department, I'm not going to speak to. I'm going to ask Mr. Moderator if it's all right that I turn the microphone over to Seth Gale.
The recreation director will have the floor.
Thanks, Shannon. All right, I asked specifically to talk to our budget. I figured, why not? I'm responsible for putting it together. I'm going to talk about it. And they were kind enough to allow me to do so. So moving on to the first slide that discusses our budget here. Looking at the current year, our total budget that we're currently under is $338,536, with a projected revenue of $178,479. Last year I stood here at town meeting and said that this was our projected revenue and this is what we think we can reach. Right now we are tracking $22,000 higher than we were last year at this time, meaning we are well within making this goal. Thank you. Meaning our net expense under the current year is $160,000 to the taxpayers. And I'm here to present a budget this year of $338,000. I'll be the first one to tell you if we cost $338,000, I wouldn't support that budget. We do not cost taxpayers $338,000. Our revenue is a huge factor into our total cost and our total impact on the taxpayers. We're projecting revenue next year of $180,000, meaning our net expense to taxpayers is $158,000 for next year, meaning the average household cost is $67.90. So it's not the $338 that we're costing people, we're costing $158, net expense of $67.90. That's on the average household being appraised at $250,000 in Vernon. So moving on to the next slide. All right. We impact the town in a couple of different ways. Obviously in our expense is the $67.90. But I'm standing right in the middle of the screen, that doesn't make sense, huh? So, the other area we impact the town is the school rental expense. This is where we offer a big savings, and I understand that there's a lot of questions with this. There should be. If it's something that you don't work with day in and day out, there's some confusing aspects of it, and I completely understand that. This current year that we're under, our rental fee is $146,786. The proposed budget for next year, $154,123. And the nuts and bolts of this is that the reason that this is beneficial is you can see that the tax rate on the town side next year, the estimated tax rate is 38 cents. The tax rate next year on the school side is $1.21. So what we're doing is we're raising a portion of the school's budget on our side as the rental fee at a tax rate of 38 cents as opposed to a tax rate of $1.21. So if you look down at the table here, the underline under the $250,000 figure here, the average taxpayer, if we raise that same rental money on the school side, it would cost $166.82. Raising it on the town side, $66.23. Just by raising that money on the town side, we are saving each of us $100. And some people say, well, we own the school already, why are we paying a rental fee? And that's a valid question. The line item in the budget is called the school rental fee. What the school rental does is we are raising a portion of the school's budget to defray their total operating costs on the town side. So when we voted today, you voted on a school budget of $4.4 million. Using a round figure, I will have an amendment, so I'm using a round figure. If we said our rental fee was $200,000, instead of raising the $4.4 million that we just voted on today, we would only have to raise $4.2 million on the school side, and we would raise $200,000, the rental fee, on the town side. We raise it at 38 cents instead of $1.21. And that's the reason for the savings right there. This is not new money. We're not adding to our budget by paying this rental fee. If we didn't have it on the town side, That money would just be accounted for. The school would then raise 4.4 instead of the 4.2. That's where the benefit is. This is not new money added to our taxes. It's going to be spent whether or not that school rental line item exists or not. The school will spend the 4.4 million. If we can reduce the total to raise on the school side by raising some on the town side, it reduces our taxes. So that's the benefit there. I do have an amendment. Would this be an appropriate time, or should we continue through my next slide does outline the amendment.
We should continue through the budget presentation, and then it'll be cleaner to make the amendment after that.
Okay.
Mrs. Rasmussen, you have the floor.
That brings our... Is that better? Okay. This slide should be the grand total. Last year was $2,042,324. Our proposed budget this year is $2,048,881. So there is a year-to-year increase of $6,557.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 7, we will recognize Recreation Director Dio for purposes of making the amendment.
Thank you. All right. So I move to amend line item 1071415600, school rental, to $214,323.40 to fund the transfer of the Vernon preschool to the Vernon Elementary School facility.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And do you have that in writing, Seth, so we can make sure that the clerk has a copy of that and I can actually see that?
Yep, she does have that.
Okay, the clerk does have a copy?
I provided it yesterday. She does have it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, you may speak to your amendment.
Well,
Since
thank
it's
you.
been moved and seconded, then I'll read this again, that the line item, and I can't even see in the dark here, that line item 1071415600, school rental, would be changed to $214,323.40 to fund the transfer of the Vernon preschool to the Vernon Elementary School facility. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Mr. Dio?
I do, thank you. All right. This amendment will allow for the move from the Vernon preschool from the town office building to a classroom here at the elementary school. The reason that this is an amendment is because budgets were set this year. We were, all prepared with 154, 123 rental fee. And then we had families approach us and say, hey, we love your program. We'd like to have our kids involved in your program for next year. Wonderful, we'd love to have you involved. Only challenge is that we've already reached our cap. We can have 14 students in the current space in the town office building under our current license. And with 4 additional students looking to attend Vernon preschool, that puts us at 18 students. Again, it's a good problem to have. However, how can we meet that need if we can't do it in our current location? So we got together, looked around, talked with the elementary school, and approached them with the idea of utilizing a classroom space here in the elementary school. And it very quickly became clear that this made sense to do. So having discussed things with the school board, having discussed things with the select board, we're here to make that amendment. And that $60,000 amendment, that's based on the square footage of the classroom and the amount of hours that we will use the classroom. It's the same calculation that we use for the gym, for our office, for the art room, for the cafeteria. So that's just staying consistent with the fee that we've paid for 14 years now. It's the same calculation. All right, so if you look at this slide, and actually, if everybody has this same handout from yesterday, the top portion of this shows the school rental fee and the rec impact as it currently exists. The bottom portion is what you're looking at up here with the amendment factored in. Again, total operating costs of $338,000, revenue projected of $180,000, expenses to taxpayers $158,000, which is $27.16 per 100,000. Total for the average household $67.90. By raising the school rental $214,000 on the town side, It is a savings of $139.78. It would cost us $261 to raise that rental fee on the school side, and it cost us, excuse me here, that was the number. It cost us $92 to raise that money on the town side. There's your savings. In other words, taxpayers would see an increase in their tax bill. If this amendment were to pass, we cost $67.90. We have $139.78 savings that we provide by raising this money on the town side. If the recreation department was not part of our tax bill was not part of our town, we would all see an increase in our taxes of $71.88. The recreation department does not cost us anything. It puts money back into our pockets. It sounds awful funny to say that we can have a $338,000 expense line, and yet $71.88 goes back into our pockets at the end of the year. So that's what we're talking about here. The amendment alone, by raising the additional $60,000 on the town side, saves each one of us $39.19. So at this time, I guess I would turn it back over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Dio. We are discussing the Dio amendment to the Article number 7. Discussion on the amendment. In the back of the room?
Seth, I'm just wondering, it may be facetious, but I assume that the rental rate is negotiated between you and the school, and it would be a friendly negotiation. Is that correct?
The rental rate is based on the square footage. 14 years or so ago, when the rental rate was put in, it was based on commercial space, a commercial figure for rental per square foot. And that's the continued, it has seen its increases over the years, generally 2% or 4% in that ballpark increase over the years. So that's the same calculation. It's not a negotiation per se, it's just a straight calculation.
Well, my question is that if this is such a good deal, and I think it is, I understand how this works, why not amend the rental rate to $4.4 million and pay it all through the town?
If it was that,
would you accept a friendly amendment?
I'd gladly accept it if I thought it would hold up. It is my understanding that other towns in Vermont have looked at ways to raise monies on the town side rather than the school side, and it has to be a legitimate process, so to speak. My understanding is that people have looked at school buses and things such as that, as far as raising those on the town side and transportation, and it has to be done in a legitimate manner to make it work or make it hold up.
Further discussion on the Dio amendment to Article number 7. Seeing none, and seeing very little here now that the lights are out.
I'll get those on as soon as we're done with this.
The amendment is to amend line item 10714156.00, school rental to $214,323.40 to fund the transfer of the Vernon preschool to the Vernon Elementary School facility. All those in favor of the Dio amendment as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have successfully amended Article 7. We would continue to, once the lights come back up, we continue to discuss Article 7 now as amended. Further discussion on the amended article. Back to the room and wait for the microphone.
Vince Johnson, I'd like to make a motion to remove the $50,000 from the select board budget for the administrative assistant position.
Is there a second? Could you put that in writing, Mr. Johnson? We want to make sure that the clerk has the amendment in your proper stead. Okay, thank you. If you don't have paper, we have some up here. All right, moved and seconded that the $50,000 intended for use for the town administrative assistant be removed from the town budget. Mr. Johnson, once you get the paper, if you wish to speak to your motion, you can do that.
Thank you. I think in the future, it'll be probably a great benefit to the town, but the town is simply not ready for this right now.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Johnson Amendment to Article number 7. Hold your voter card up. Even though I know you're a registered voter, I want to make sure that there's no question at all. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. Mike Ball. As some of you may have known that I was on the select board as well as being on the select board chair, the amount of time that I put in to do this job was in no way the select board meetings and whatnot. I was putting somewhere in between 20 to 25 hours at least a week on my own time. I was taking time and having to juggle work in order to come in. There were times where I had to intercede and basically provide for intervention at times between people. It was really difficult, and the amount of time that I put in, I still was falling behind. I personally don't think the administrator is the way we're going to end up. I personally believe is that in order for us to move on in the future, to be able to conduct all the personnel evaluations, the keeping up with the grid that we spend so much time in putting together, is that we need to have somebody who basically is on the boots on the ground and dealing with all of the employees on a day-to-day basis. And they have the ability to do that interface. Right now, the select board, in a lot of cases, is that the select board members don't actively engage with the employees on a daily basis. They're not able to be here, just simply because they have their own lives. They're trying to make money and survive. And that I believe in the beginning it will be an administrator position, but what I would like to see is a manager position, and Vernon to have its own charter and not be underneath the legislature's charter, that we'd have our own charter, and that position of a manager would have autonomy and authority outside of the select board. And the select board should be doing the 50,000-foot view and providing guidance to the manager, but the manager would be the person that would be doing the day-to-day stuff and could be held accountable to make sure that they are observing the employees and providing real personnel evaluations. So I would say is I would vote against the amendment. I think we need to start off with an administrator, and so that then the select board has the amount of time necessary in order to evaluate how the administrator position is working. And we don't want to see these pictures. Okay, I gotta change that computer. So I would vote against the amendment. Vote against the amendment so that the select board has the ability to evaluate how we're moving forward, because if we don't start doing this, the select board is not going to be able to do all the negotiations and moving forward with whether it's Entergy, Velco, Sassomo. There's a lot of different people involved here, and if basically we don't know what's going to end up happening in the future. So they need to have the time to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Johnson Amendment to Article number 7.
Mr. Moderator? Sorry,
Mrs. O'Donnell.
I'm in the corner back here. If it would be okay, Mr. Moderator, I would like to read a part of a letter to the editor that was in the newspaper last week by one of the Guilford Select Board members, and I'm only going to read the last paragraph. It says,
I just want to make sure that there's no objection from the body before we do that. Just want to make sure that there is not a problem with it. And I see no objection from the body, so please continue.
Okay, it says, I applaud the Vernon Select Board's proposal to fund a new town administrator position. I have served for 12 years on the Guilford Select Board, and I have found the position of town administrator, first enacted in 2008, to be an invaluable resource and a great addition to our office. The town administrator has taken on many important tasks. one of which is finding grant opportunities that we as a select board would have not been able to pursue. This has resulted in a gain to the town that outweighs the cost of the position. I hope the voters of Vernon support the funding of this position. We had a lot of discussion, Mr. Moderator, amongst our select board about doing this, but these are very, very difficult times in Vernon, as we've seen in the past year in some of the things that have happened in this town. It's very difficult to try to figure a way to move on without a huge portion of our resources remaining. Last night when the school presented their budget, I don't know how many people noticed it, but they said that tax-wise, out of 104 towns, Vernon is 96. Spending-wise, the town of Vernon was 27, 28, something like that. That's because of our 25% rate. That's huge. When we lose that, our taxes are going to escalate crazy. And that's why this select board has tried very, very hard to work on a budget that was fair and honest, bring us into the same realm as our neighbors, live the way our neighbors live, which hasn't been done in this town for a lot of years. And it has not been easy. We have taken an awful lot of beatings in the process, but we have remained true to what the voters voted last year at town meeting. Now, as time progresses, we've worked really hard at trying to find ways for economic development in this town. We have to find some way to replace the revenue that we're losing. And we can only do that through a whole lot of time and energy. Janet and I are both serving on the Planning Commission to try to look at ways, and we've changed the Planning Commission from just a Planning Commission to a Planning Commission Economic Development Commission. Because we need to find ways to improve this town, or many of the people that I'm looking at right now are not going to be able to afford to live in this town. Now, if I'm looking at myself personally, if I have to pay $2,000 more in taxes, am I going to lose my house? Absolutely not. And believe me, there have been many times in the past year where I've said, I don't care if my taxes go up, I'm getting out of here. But there's a lot of you that can't. And you're the ones we're fighting for. Now, I know $50,000 sounds like a lot of money, but we can't be successful in the future if we're depending on 5 people who are really supposed to meet twice a month. We can't do all the work. We're all serving on other committees, and we're all working really hard to make a difference in this town, but we need help. A town administrator is valuable because they can write grants. We're leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on the table. Look at where we are. We're the only community in the state of Vermont that is losing what we're losing. But we can't apply for grants because it is exhausting. We tried applying for the grant for the energy money. We spent hours and hours and hours, but we didn't get the grant because we don't know how to write grants. It's a talent. You have to know the right words to use, and you have to use them over and over again. And that's what brings your grant to the top. So by having somebody who can write grants, by having somebody who can oversee what's happening, by having somebody who can keep up with the town policies, we're ahead of the game. And that's all we're trying to do. The vote, this budget, everything in this budget is now your budget. It's your decision to make. And I understand how difficult it is to make a decision to spend $50,000 more than we did last week. But you have to look at the overall picture and realize why we're doing what we're doing. So I urge you to support this. I understand if you can't. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Johnson Amendment to Article 7, down front in the middle.
Hi, Deb Berrien. I wanted to query the select board, and Patty, yes, you've said this before about the grant that you applied for and so forth. I'm not so sure we'd get an administrator that can write grants, but it'd be great if we could at that price. But my query is, and it does pertain to the amendment, is would this town administrator alleviate any non-statutory duties in any of the other offices currently? Would that be any relief to our town clerk, our town treasurer, any others that currently find themselves in a bit of a bind? It's a lot of work.
The select board is queried, if it so chooses. Mrs. O'Donnell?
Sorry, Mr. Moderator. You know, I I guess they could. The treasurer's office is a perfect example. Right now, they're responsible for all the HR work. They could alleviate some of that. Now, that's not statutorial, though. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said statutorial. We couldn't do anything about the statutorial stuff, but the non-statutorial stuff, yes, they could ease some of that burden. Mr. Moderator, can we just take a minute to put our tables together? I'm getting like a kink in my neck from sitting here like this. Plus, I feel like people are asking me questions. I'm behind the curtain.
Well, we will take a couple of minutes of...
Just a few minutes.
Just a couple of minutes of recess while we move the tables together. I think it'd benefit everybody to be able to see our select board.
Yeah, across the room. I couldn't see people sitting on that side at all. Yeah. This side of the room.
Just so you know, I was asked whether we'd have election results tonight. I was hoping that before we leave tonight, we can read those into the official record before we close the meeting. But again, that is up to the counters over at Town Hall. We set over there? All right. We are back in session again. We are continuing to discuss the Johnson Amendment to Article 7. Further discussion on the amendment. Back of the room. And then we'll try to work over to the other...
Hi, I'm Sue Cobb. I might have lost my mind here, but it seems to me the whole point of all of this is that our revenue is declining, okay? Vermont Yankee is going to be shut down. What we want to do is cut the budget, and what our select board wants to do is add to the budget. I really am having a hard time with all of this, mainly because we're getting a mixed message. We're either in gloom and doom and, you know, we need to do something, or we're not in gloom and doom, and we need to add this position, which really isn't just $50,000. There's benefits. This position, we're looking at $76,000. And I really think the taxpayers need to think about this. Just because they think that they can't do whatever job it is they want to do, and they want to hire somebody else to do something else, why are we doing this at a time when we need to cut the budget?
Further discussion on the amendment to Article 7 over on this side. If you have your... Yes.
That was going to be my question, actually. You maybe answered part of it, but I wondered, with the salary and the benefits included, what would be the total cost for a full-time town administrative assistant?
The select board is queried, or the treasurer is queried, if that is the case. We get a microphone over in that direction. Microphone over by the treasurer, please. Thank you. By the way, thank you again to the Dio brothers for running microphones for us. I don't know if that was in their job description.
It evolves.
Cindy Turnley, the total cost would be $71,774.
Thank you. You may continue.
I have a further comment I'd like to make then.
Please proceed.
I wondered if the board considered a part-time assistant as opposed to a full-time, and if so, why they went with full-time.
The board is queried. Mrs. O'Donnell?
The board did talk extensively about part or full-time, but we were really concerned. We want a true professional town administrator. We want somebody who can write grants, because that's a hugely important part of why we want to do this. Because there are, with the problems our town is facing right now, there are a lot of things that we're eligible for. We don't know how to find them, and we don't know how to apply for them. So to get a true professional town administrator, we were afraid we wouldn't be able to find somebody for a part-time position. And I think when you look at the budget that we put out, the bottom line of our budget, if I can find it, is a little over a $6,000 increase. So we made changes in our budget that made up for the money that we were spending. And it's not only about cutting budgets, it's about spending money wisely. And that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that every penny that's being spent is being spent wisely.
Further discussion on the Johnson Amendment to Article number 7. Over on this side of the room, gentleman with his voting card up.
Mark Parker. I apologize, I came in late. I may not have heard everything that was discussed. If we do decide to hire a town administrator, would the town administrator be working in conjunction with the select board, or would the select board be working for the town administrator? How would that work out?
The select board is queried. Mrs. Rasmussen.
The way I believe we have to set it up statutorily, we can't have, correct me if I'm wrong, but we cannot have a town manager, right? Who would be a truly autonomous person, because we have to have a town charter in order to do that. We don't have a town charter. So the only thing that we can do at this point is hire a town administrator who would report to the select board.
Further discussion on the amendment to Article 7, back corner of the room.
Josh Unruh, I just had a suggestion where to get the other $50,000 or $70,000 with benefits. We saw a fairly big line item for the Sheriff's Department of $223,000 for 24/7 coverage. That could easily be cut down to a similar amount of hours per week that we had when the town had its own police force. Save the money there, have a town administrator, and have the best of both worlds.
Further discussion on the amendment to Article 7. I saw a couple of hands up, the one toward the middle of the room in the back.
Once Hanks. In general, as the select board will know, because I was at the select board meetings when the idea of the town administrator was discussed, that I am generally in favor of having an administrator to help the select board. As long as the select board will, I think we've all, many of us have felt that the select board has found itself micromanaging. And if the select board can back away and simply, as Mike said, go from 50,000 feet and set policy, and the town administrator can help the various departments accomplish those priorities, then I would be for it. I do, as a side part, want to caution the select board and the rest of the town about the glory of grants. Grants sound wonderful, but you can't live on grants. They end, and you can't depend on them. So while they're terrific when you get them, when you don't get them, you suffer. And so I would caution the select board on overselling the grant possibilities, because as well as they come, they go.
Gentleman over on the side of the room, and we'll recognize you next.
Shane Shippey. Just my 2 cents worth with what benefits cost and everything. I fully support the concept of having an administrator to help the select board do their duties. I do not endorse a full-time. I think we should, in lieu of we're slashing everywhere we can, especially with the town employees' benefits.
Mr. Shippey, we are discussing the amendment which deals
Correct.
with the administrator and not other parts of the budget, right?
Okay. But we've been looking at saving money. I don't see paying somebody full-time benefits as being cost-effective. I fully support having an administrator, but I urge everyone to go with supporting a part-time, and we can see where it goes from there and possibly make it full-time in the future.
Further discussion on the amendment, Mrs. Harris?
In response to Munson's, I think that everyone on the select board, whether I'm here or not, would definitely let them do their own job. That's the idea. We want them to do their job, let us do our job instead of trying to do everything. On the grants, I sit on the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Board of Directors. I'm always hearing these other towns that have all these grants coming in, and it really makes me jealous because, I mean, they're getting lots of money. And yes, grants do cost money in the end if you're not wise. But if you're wise, you work. So if you got a grant for someone for 3 years, you use them for 3 years. And then you choose at that time, have them do their job in 3 years, and then you don't have them. You don't have to keep a person. And if it's a product that you're getting for a grant, you got it. But there are a lot of grants out there, and I think it's time Vernon got some of them.
Further discussion on the amendment proposal, Mrs. Rasmussen?
I just wanted to add something really briefly. Munson, I agree with you to a certain extent about grants, but I think what I was thinking of, I was the liaison to the seniors this year when I was on the select board for the past 2 years actually. And when we visited other towns, we noticed that both Dummerston and Putney have managed to they've turned their seniors organization into a 501c3. And we were trying to find out how maybe we could do that or that would be valuable for our seniors. And as it turned out, there was a mountain of paperwork involved. We weren't sure exactly how to go about that. So that would be something that an administrator could hopefully do for us, because it doesn't seem like it's difficult, it just seems like it's wildly time consuming. And that would be something that could change that organization permanently. So that's the kind of thing that I think I'm hoping that this job would be able to do.
Further discussion on the Johnson Amendment to Article Number 7, this side of the room? Oh, but Mr. Dunkley, I'm going to recognize you first. Got to look out of both sides of my eyes here. Go ahead.
As a town, we are encumbered by a form of local government that was developed more than 200 years ago. Society today requires a great deal more of administration, and leaving it up to a 5-member or a 3-member part-time group of people just doesn't cut it in today's society. And I think it's being penny wise and pound foolish to start to disregard the value that a town administrator could serve our community. I don't believe it's to help the select board, I think it's to help our town. Most surrounding towns have administrators or managers, and I don't think this is something that we can put off 2 or 3 years down the road. We got to do it this year. There's a lot of challenges facing our community, and I firmly believe that it's urgent that we do have an administrator.
Further discussion on the amendment to Article 7, the lady on the side. Microphone right over there.
Can I call the question?
You may.
Call the question.
The motion has been made to cease debate. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, we cease debate on the amendment to Article 7. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We go to the amendment. The Johnson Amendment as written is a motion to remove $50,000 from the Select Board budget for the purposes of an administrative assistant. All those in favor of the amendment proposal as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays do have it. The amendment has been defeated. We revert to the Article number 7 as earlier amended by the Deal Amendment for purposes of full discussion. Further discussion on the article? Yeah, on the side. That's you, Mr. Shippey.
I would like to make an amendment that we change the administrator to a part-time position and, I don't know, allocate half the money.
I believe we have dealt with the administrative position already. I would question whether your amendment is in order at this time.
That was to eliminate it completely. I'm saying let's make it a part-time position.
Then with that in mind, is there a second to the Shippey amendment? Your proposal fails for lack of an amendment, sir.
Somebody said second. Second back here.
You need to speak up. I cannot hear. All right. Thank you. And could you put that in writing, please, as is our need? Just want to make sure I have your wording correct before we go on with that. And again, if you are seconding, please speak up. Mr. Shippey, could you restate your amendment proposal as you've given it to me? Just want to make sure that we have it all correct.
That instead of raising the $71,000 or whatever that it's going to cost for a full-time administrator, that we raise $25,000 or appropriate, whatever you want to label it, for a part-time administrator.
So the amendment proposal for Mr. Shippey is that we make the administrator a part-time position with an allocation of $25,000. It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the amendment? First up front.
Ron Lockever, it's a question, and I don't know to whom I'm asking this.
Well, please raise the question. We will see where it goes.
I understand town manager, but I don't understand the difference between an administrator and an administrative assistant. I want clarification. Thank you.
The board is queried if it so chooses. Mrs. Rasmussen?
I don't think there, in the way that we presented it, I don't think there is a difference. It's just a title.
We're going to let you pose a follow-up before we recognize anyone else.
I asked mainly because I was an administrative assistant and that was a support staff person. So I just wanted clarification.
Oh, okay, and we probably will clarify that, or the board will clarify that once we download the job descriptions from VLCT and get it all formalized.
Yeah, it's on the table over here. They provided for your information.
Microphone.
Use microphone. Mrs. Powell, you need to be recognized, and you're recognized. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm really sorry. I should have had that up to my mouth. It does explain everything there as far as the role of it, but it calls it an administrative assistant. It is only a name only. They are both the same. I have pulled them off, job descriptions off, and looked at them when we were considering, because I really at first wasn't for this. And so I am now. But so I was looking at the job descriptions, and they're both the same, either administrative assistant or administrator. It's just
title, whatever.
Further discussion on the amendment up front here?
Norma Manning. I just want to ask the assembled people here, how many people do you believe would relocate to Vernon, relocate their family, and possibly a second spouse who might have to find employment for a part-time position? How many recent college graduates do you think will come here? They probably would come here for a part-time, but how many would stay just long enough to find a better position, and we would become kind of a step up to a better position in the state? So if we're looking for someone that we want to relocate, we're going to have bigger bait on the hook.
Further discussion on the amendment proposal? Mrs. Harris, I saw that you had waved your voter card first. Please go ahead.
Just for clarification, we put in town administrator, not administrative assistant.
Further discussion on the amendment proposal, back of the room, and we'll then work our way up front. Mr. Gassett.
Dale Gassett, the board currently has an administrative secretary. What will become of her position if the administrative assistant comes on board?
The board is queried. Mrs. O'Donnell.
The board currently has a clerk who takes minutes, does up the minutes and posts them. We're looking for an administrative person who can be a grant writer, can oversee the functions at the town office, can keep track of the policies and so forth for the town. So there'll be a manager position more than anything, with grant writing abilities and with the capability of being able to attend meetings as we progress into what we're going to do for economic development.
Further discussion on the amendment proposal. I believe Mr. Pond had his card up first.
George Pond. I was wondering if anybody in the room or members of the select board party, do you happen to know, without hiring in part-time administrator or a full-time one, are there not companies within our region that could be contracted to do grant writing other than hiring their personnel on and having to pay the extra money for benefits?
The board is queried, Mrs. Rasmussen.
If that were the only function that that person would serve, yeah, you probably can find some grant writers you could contract for, but I think what Patty just spoke about and what everybody's been speaking about is also having that person do some HR functions and a lot of other administrative functions within the town office.
All right, down front here next, and then we'll go to the far corner of the room afterwards.
Deb Barrier, I just wanted, it's pretty much been said, but I want to reiterate, I also am in a profession that tangentially is related to grant writing. It is a difficult and prolonged thing. You have to be an expert, and I don't think a part-time would cut it. I really do think we need a full-time person. Even then, you're paying them, I'm a teacher, you're paying them at pretty much a salary of what a teacher maybe at the master's level would be getting, and that's not a lot for a person in that profession with those responsibilities.
Back corner of the room is next Mr. Coons.
Matt Coons. Based on the orange handout that we have, I'm just curious because we have a part-time select board clerk, as was stated, but in the second sentence of this handout, it says these assistants have many titles, including town administrator, administrative assistant, or select board clerk. So in theory, if we add a full-time position to our half-time position or 20-hour-a-week position now, we'll have 1.5 positions. Even though this isn't part of the friendly amendment, I'm just curious if we need 1.5 positions or if one position seems it's all the same description based on the handout that we were provided.
The select board is queried, Mrs. O'Donnell.
I don't know where this came from. We didn't put it out on the... We did not put this out on the table, so we don't know where it came from. The position of our town select board clerk is different than the position that we're looking for. We're looking for a professional, educated town administrator who can write grants, who can oversee HR. Our clerk is not, that's not her job. Her job is to take minutes at the select board meeting and to write the minutes up and to post them. They're completely different.
Further discussion, Mrs. Howe?
Yes, I believe the question was, what would happen to that position is what the question was. I believe the position would stay, that we will still have our secretary, and then we would have an administrative assistant or administrator. That's the answer to your question.
Again, we are discussing the Shippey amendment proposal. Back of the room. Hold the voter card up, Mr. Andrews. Thank you.
David Andrews. The orange card came over from the desk. The bottom of the page says it's page 61 from the VLCT Handbook for Vermont Town Officers. I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's really confused here, and I'm looking for a little bit of clarification on this. It sounds as though we've got some carts before the horse here. We don't have a job description, we don't have a title. Right, we're not quite sure. Right, we're not sure where we're going with that. Mrs. O'Donnell just used the term manager, then we've heard clerk, we have a clerk. The town report under the select board budget says we have a select board administrative assistant. Can someone on the board just clear up what we're really talking about for what we have and what we're looking to get?
The select board is queried, Mrs. Rasmussen. Turn your microphone on, please.
As we said in the slide was for a town administrator. The proposal is for a town administrator. There is no job description yet. It is for a full-time, 40-hour compensation, $50,000 plus benefit position. The select board will set up external hiring committee consisting of 2 select board members and 3 community participants. The job description, we didn't put out this orange piece of paper, so I'm not sure where it came from. The job description will be created using a VLCT suggested job description as a model. That committee, the hiring committee, will then recommend top candidates to the select board for final decision. That's as far as we've gotten. We haven't put out a full proposal yet because we didn't know if it was going to be accepted or not.
Further discussion, Mrs. Kudamarsh has been waving her voter card. And you need to wait for a microphone, ma'am, or else I will not recognize you. Please continue.
We said it, he said it once. It came from the VLCT, and the town clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion in back of the room? I'll wait for the microphone, Mario.
I heard 2 terms being used, appointed and hiring. Are we hiring or appointing? And I thought we had a hiring freeze in place.
The select board is queried.
Anybody on the select board?
Mrs. Rasmussen.
It will be hired. There's a hiring committee that will recommend to the select board. The position will be a hired position. The hiring freeze would not pertain to a new position that we're asking the town if we can create.
Those with your voter cards up, there's about 5 ahead of you, so some patience is requested, please. Mrs. Shippey, you are given the floor next.
Hello, Carol Shippey. I'm really not into government very much. I need a lot of explanations, but it's difficult for me to vote for a position that you don't even know what the job description is. I want to know really what this person's going to do. This grant stuff is said enough. Let's not even say that word anymore. I'd like to know what this person is really going to do. But you don't know. How can we hire? How can we give you money to hire somebody to do something that no one knows what they're going to do? Thank you.
Further discussion on the Shippey amendment, and that's what we're working on. Woman in the back of the room.
Move the question.
The question has been moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. We cease debate on the Shippey amendment. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. And again, the recurring question is to amend Article 7, calling to make the town administrator position a part-time position, allocating $25,000. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. You have rejected the Shippey amendment. We revert back to Article 7 as amended. Further discussion. Mrs. Howe.
I call the question.
The question has been called. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. We cease debate on Article 7. That is not debatable, ma'am. Again, it has been moved that we cease debate, moved and seconded. And so what that means is you are voting on whether to cease all further debate on Article 7. Well, then you need to vote on it. All right? These are the rules of the meeting. If you don't like it, find another moderator. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. We'll continue debate on Article 7 as amended. Further debate. Back corner of the room, Mr. Unruh.
I mentioned this in my previous statement. I'd like to make an amendment about the coverage of the police department, but I guess I can't make that amendment until I know there are some options out there that Sheriff Clark has, and I'd like to see those based on the hours and coverage and how those would affect our bottom line.
The sheriff is queried, and him not being a resident, we would seek the body's permission. So unless there's objection, we will see if the sheriff wishes to respond. Sheriff Clark. Is there objection? Then first we need to hear from Ms. Frost. Wait for the microphone.
Aren't we supposed to vote on whether we want a administrator or whatever it is? For 50,000 first?
We've already voted on that amendment, ma'am, and we voted on a second amendment, so we're back to the full article as revised.
So we haven't even, we're back to square one.
We're back to square one. We actually have eliminated a proposal to defund the town administrator position and the separate amendment, which would make it part-time. So we're back to the full article. Thank you. Sheriff Clark, with the body's permission, we will ask you to respond.
I think it'll be easier for me to stand up front. That way everybody doesn't have to turn your heads. I did in October, per our contract, by the 1st of November, I had to present to the select board what my rates would be for the upcoming year. And so what you saw up there was the 1% increase for the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week coverage that you're currently receiving from my office. I will tell you what I told the board, and I've told a lot of people in town. I will provide the services that you ask for. So whatever you decide, we will provide those services. So on October 20th, I presented them, again, the full-time rate, similar to this year, is $233,950. An option is 140 hours a week, which would be 20 hours a day. That's $220,000 plus a call-out. So essentially, each time we call out an officer or a deputy, we would charge, and I put $50 in there, but there are other ways we can do that. We could try to flex the schedule. So if we look at the data, when, let's say that Sunday morning from 8 to noon, there's not a lot of call volume, we may not put a deputy on the road to make up if they got called out on a Friday night. There's a way we can do that. If you went down to 120 hours a week, it would be $205,000. And if you went down to 100 hours a week, it'd be $192,000. Those are the four options I presented to the select board on October 20th, and those numbers have not changed.
Hold on, you need to be recognized before you just speak out. Those are and have been our meeting rules. Okay, Mrs. Rasmussen, you're recognized. Okay. Use a microphone, ma'am.
Sheriff Clark, would you mind repeating those numbers again?
For the same coverage as you're receiving right now, it's a 1% increase for a total of $233,950 for a year of service. For 140 hours a week, it is $220,000 for that 20 hours a day, plus a $50 per hour for a call out. For 120 hours a week, it's $205,000, and for 100 hours a week, it's $192,000.
Thank you, Sheriff Clark.
And it's just been pointed out by Lieutenant Anderson, it is in the town report on page 43, those same numbers.
Thank you. Further discussion on the full article. We're going to go down front, over hearing, and then we'll recognize Mr. Shippey following Ms. Berry.
Hi, Dan Barrier. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Sheriff's Department for providing services. I have this last year seen the cruiser just about every day, and up my road every day, and on the side of the road. Very, very visible. We are asking for just a little bit more money than we gave Seth for the rec department. So when you took a look at the impact on the household that Seth talked about, it's really just a little bit more than that for have the sheriff full-time. I think it gives the families coming in the same feeling as having the rec department. So I just want to say that I feel very strongly about keeping services high.
Further discussion, Mr. Shippey.
What is the least amount we can purchase a year and still have 911 coverage supplied by the Sheriff's Department?
The Sheriff's Department is queried, if so chooses. Sheriff Clark.
I wasn't prepared for that question, I'll be quite frank. It would be a conversation that I would have to have with the Vermont State Police. The reason for that is if, let's say you went down to below 100 hours in a week, then the majority of the time, it would almost be a 50-50 blend. You're always going to have 911 coverage. You're going to call 911, someone's going to respond. The question is, what uniform are they wearing? So I would have to sort of pass on that question for now and get back to the entire town in my response and look at the numbers.
Further discussion on the article. We're going to get back to Mr. Unruh because he had not completed his discussion. Mr. Unruh.
I have a question and then I want to make an amendment.
Please proceed.
I guess my question is, because my memory doesn't work very good, how many hours did our local town police force cover for us prior to the Windham County Sheriff coming on?
The select board or someone is queried? Mrs. O'Donnell?
We had 120 hours coverage.
Thank you. Mr. Unruh.
So I would like him to make the amendment to raise $205,000 for 120 hours of Windham County Sheriff coverage.
And could you write that down, please?
Yes,
so
sir.
We make sure the clerk has it. Is there a second to the amendment? I did hear a second? Yes. Okay, make sure you speak up. Again, it's a big crowd and I don't hear very well. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Unruh that we contract for 120 hours of coverage per week with the Sheriff's Department. Mr. Unruh, do you wish to speak to your proposal of amendment?
You're looking at about a $25,000 savings where we have already decided basically to add $50,000 for a town administrator. That's about half of that person's salary, benefits not included obviously. So we're going back to what we've had for years upon years up until last year where we decided 24/7 coverage, where I remember that there was several people in the beginning saying that our police force was the way to go and the hours that they covered is the way to go. So all I'm asking for is to go back to what we used to have and then help fund the other things that we voted on tonight.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment. In the front part of the room, Mr. Ball.
Mike Ball. I'm not sure that everybody understands that or is aware of the fact that I was a captain on the fire department in charge of the EMS for a number of years. I've been an EMT for about 20 years. What's happening in our community and other communities is there's more violence. Whether it's, bath salts or drugs, or in the fact of domestics, because of the amount of stress that people are under, is that there is more violence. I was assaulted at least twice while I was in Vernon, at least twice. And that what ends up happening is that when there's an officer on 24/7, and there is basically a need for an officer to basically protect the safety of the emergency services, fire and EMS. If there is the threat of violence, fire and EMS cannot go in, period. It will not go in. So it doesn't matter whether or not there's kids involved, it doesn't matter. Fire and EMS will not go in. If the Windham County Sheriffs aren't in town and we have to wait for an officer, whether or not state police or Brattleboro Police Department or Windham County Sheriff to come from another part within the county, it's going to delay the response time significantly. Personally, I liked it a lot when I had the backup, that I knew that the backup was going to come probably within about 4 to 5 minutes. And I like that. And I like that as a civilian now, and the fact is that if I need them, I can call, and there's no delay in fire and EMS to come in. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment. Lots of people with voter cards up. We'll try to get to all of you if we can. Back of the room, you have your hand up first.
Whatever coverage we end up choosing is contingent on Sheriff Clark's willingness to give us coverage. At the recent select board meeting, he read a letter to the select board asking that they individually and collectively assure him of the independence and respect that the sheriff's office should have. I'm asking the sheriff if he has received that assurance individually and collectively from the select board, and if he has not, why are you here?
Further discussion? Sheriff Clark, I believe you were asked a question. Please continue.
Yes, I have received from the 5 current sitting board members their assurances, as I requested in the letter. And the reason I'm here tonight, as I said a few moments ago, I and my staff are still willing and want to provide services to the town of Vernon.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment. Plenty of cards up. We're going to go down front.
Ms. Lockever, I have heard this year and in previous years how we want to be attractive to new families coming in, and we also want to keep our current residents safe. I support keeping 24/7. It's not a question of selling and being cheaper and getting our tax rate down. It's a question of our safety and security in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Unruh amendment proposal. Center of the room, and please voter card up. Mr. Morrison.
Jerry Morrison. I'd like to just point out 5 communities, neighboring communities, Guilford, Dummerston, Newfane, Putney, and Westminster. All total, they're spending $128,600 for their coverage. It's 9 times the total square area is 9 times Vernon's. Vernon's is 20 square miles. Guilford alone is twice the size. And the population is 5 times more. We're looking at spending $205,000 for 2,200 people, and these 5 towns are spending $128,600 for 10,773 people. I mean, this is way out of line. That's enough. Let's see.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment. Did I see additional voter cards over on this side? Looks like Seth's coming to you.
Yes, Steve Zaluzny. I think in the past year we've made great strides in what we have now currently for law enforcement, and I think it's much more efficient, and we're getting a lot more for our dollar, obviously. So I think that the amount of service we require is not what it was because of these changes. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment? Right on the same side, yes.
Barbara Mosley. There are a lot of women in town who live alone, and mothers who are living alone, young mothers who are caring for their children. And I know it's a great comfort to me, who lives alone, to know that the Sheriff's Department is readily available to help me should I need that.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment. Back of the room, I believe Mr. Andrews has his hand up first. And then we'll go to Mr. Buston. Mr. Andrews.
David Andrews. Stating the obvious, I think there's no debating that Sheriff Clark is an honorable man, and I think he's done a splendid job in the town for the past year. Full-time coverage to me, as I look at the various departments that we have and the various categories for spending money in our budget, I can't think of a better use of our dollars than the vital services that we have, which would include the Sheriff's Office. If we're looking at cutting this down to 120 hours, are we next, as we're looking at the next amendment, are we going to look at the fire department for only being 3/4? Are we going to cut rescue week that it's only 120 hours a week? When you need them, you need them. And when we need them, they're there. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair would recognize Mr. Buston, and then we'll go in the middle of the room to the woman who also had her hand up. Thank you.
Miriam? I'd like to go back to what Mr. Ball said. When you respond to a domestic case, it becomes a crime scene, not a fire scene or an EMT scene. So you need a police officer or a law enforcement officer there immediately, and we are not allowed to enter the premises if it's considered a crime scene. So to have them have to come from another town could mean life. So I'm all for it 24/7.
Further discussion on the Unruh amendment. Center of the room. Man, you're next. Wave your voter card so they can see.
I personally feel that it's too much and that we should reduce. And we're cutting back on everything else, trying to, and 2,200 people at most in this town. I've never seen such coverage, 24-hour. I think maybe cut back 20 this year and see how it goes.
Further discussion on the amendment. Several voter cards are up at once, and the gentleman over on the side of the room had his up first.
Seth Shippey, I move that we call the question.
It's been moved and seconded, we cease debate, and whether that happens is up to you, members of the body. Just to repeat. All those in favor of ceasing debate on the Unruh Amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We've ceased debate on the Unruh Amendment. Again, the amendment would be to amend the line item for the Sheriff's Department to raise $205,000 for 120 hours of coverage from the Wyndham County Sheriff's Department. All those in favor of the Unruh Amendment as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. The proposal of amendment has been defeated. We again return to Article 7 as it currently stands. Further discussion. In the center of the room there, ma'am, you're next. Yes, go ahead.
So now we're moving on to other items that can be discussed.
We are moving on to other items within the article that can be discussed.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ross, by the way.
Thank you.
Would like to make the motion that we amend the town clerk's budget by $15,000 to a total amount of $108,124. That's an increase of $15,000. That increase would allow us to hire a part-time assistant, trainer, in training.
Do we have a second to the proposal of amendment? Moved and seconded that the town clerk's proposed budget be increased by $15,000 to a total of $108,124. Have you given a copy of that proposal to the clerk? Do you have that in writing?
No.
Could you put it in writing?
Can I just say, change the amount?
Yes.
Change the town clerk's budget to $108,124.
Do you
if
have
I'm
that?
Correct, that is an increase of $15,000.
Do you have that amendment, Ina? Okay, very good. You wish to speak to your amendment since it has been moved and seconded?
Yes.
Please continue.
I've been volunteering for the last 8 months or so in the town clerk's office just to keep myself busy and out of trouble, hopefully. And there's a lot of interesting information at the town clerk's office and a lot of cross-referencing. Some things are recorded in 2 or 3 different places, and these are important town records. And if they weren't important, they wouldn't be stored in a vault. In talking with Ina at the town clerk, she's the assistant town clerk and has been for quite some time. She's looking to retire in a year or 2. And then we have no one coming up in the ranks that's learning the job, but it's just not something that you can walk into off the street. Also, the fact that the town clerk's office currently has 69 paid hours of work time. The previous town clerk had 110 paid hours of work time per week. That's a difference of 41 hours per week, or if my calculations are correct, 2,132 work hours per year. But the statutory requirements have not lessened. So that's my reason for making this amendment.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment by Mrs. Frost. Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley. The $15,000 would not be the total increase in the budget because you have to take into account FICA, which would be another $1,146. So that would have to be added on as well. So it would be also, if they qualified for the Great West retirement, that would be another $300. So adding that, the $1,146 and the $300 to the $15 would be the total amount that would increase for the town clerk's budget.
Could you try and restate that a little slower and a little clearer, please?
The 15,000, the total increase for the 15,000, including the FICA and the Great West retirement, would mean actually an increase of $16,425 to the budget, which is $93,124. Would increase the town clerk's budget to $109,549.
109,584?
549. 109,549.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Frost, would you consider that a friendly amendment?
How many hours a week does that give us? 19, 18, 16? 19. That would give you 19 hours a week. If we left that at 15,000, we'd have maybe 16 hours a week or 18 hours a week.
So you would not consider that a friendly amendment? You just as soon leave it at your total?
I'd leave it at 15,000.
All right.
Whatever we can hire someone for 16 hours at 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. I would be happy with that.
Very good. Further discussion on the Frost amendment, Mr. Ball.
Mike Ball. I know in the past that there is income that comes into the town clerk's office from basically the different services that they perform for attorneys and whatnot. And there used to be a running fund of money, and I'd be curious as to what that running fund of money currently stands at now, and whether or not that would take care of the part-time. No?
The select board and/or the treasurer is queried. The treasurer should respond, Mrs. Turnley.
At one time, the town clerk's office had their own account. That account was closed when the new town clerk took office, so that I know of, they do not have one.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment, Mr. Gassett.
Dale Gassett. One of the intents, I believe, for proposing some monies for assistance, I know this is going to come to a shock of most of you, but we are all getting older, and the people in the town clerk's office have no one of a younger stature for transitioning. And the job is so complex in there that we're not going to take somebody off the street without at least a modicum of training and understanding how things work. So the intent of this is not really, is twofold, somewhat to lighten the work of the town clerk, but also to get somebody in there to understand how the town clerk's business works. So it's really part of the money, to work in two different directions at the same time. And I think this would be a great transition period to get the right person in there to help alleviate the load, but also transition into possibly being an assistant town clerk at some point in time.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment, Mrs. Mosley. And they are bringing a microphone to you.
The town clerk's office is historically really the heart of the community. The records that are kept in the town are absolutely necessary to anyone who wants to keep track of their land, all these transactions that may be happening when houses are being sold, if people leave, and so on. Plus the historic value, and Sandy Harris certainly, when she was clerk, did a wonderful job of maintaining and making sure records were preserved, and even having, it isn't long that we've even had the town clerk's office until this building was built. All our records were at risk everywhere, and I think that it's important that the person who is the town clerk has to understand how important these records are, and sort of be trained. I think Sandy actually had some kind of a, did you work with Betty Underwood in advance? You followed Virgie?
Mrs. Harris, you are interrogated?
I had Betty for 6 months. I was with Betty for 6 months before she retired.
Okay. But you also, I think, I think at one time you had a couple of assistants, not Mary Crossman, but Darlene Polimas were your assistants.
Mrs. Harris, you were interrogated?
Okay, what we did, Betty's, I don't know how many knew Betty, but she stressed that, Vermont Yankee would not always be here. And so we started trying to make sure that the town clerk's office, when you had to cut the budgets, would be able to be run by a town clerk and a part-time assistant. And so we did everything we could to make sure everything was done. When Vermont Yankee was paying 90% of our fees, we got records back to 1838 restored. You can go in now, you can find your, if you go in to get your septic permit, you don't have to know who owned the property before, you just look at the grand list, pull it. You can do that in 30 seconds. It used to take us half an hour to an hour. So the idea was to get everything up to snuff so that it could be done with a town clerk, any part-time, or even a per diem assistant. But yes, I did. I had a couple and they worked really good.
Yeah. But we really need to train someone that has that sense of appropriateness and the value of these wonderful records.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment. There are several people waving their cards at once. Be patient, Mrs. O'Donnell.
Are you telling me to be patient, or you?
No, I'm telling the body to be patient, and I'm recognizing you.
I just want to make sure. I didn't want to say anything.
No, you're fine.
Mr. Moderator, I want to step back a year and remind everybody how we got here. Vermont Yankee had announced it was closing, and we had to scramble to try to figure out how we were going to live in the future. We separated into 2 members, and we visited 3 different towns and compared ourselves to their towns and how they function. Now, I know that people are going to say we're not Guilford, we're not Putney, we're not Dummerston, but the workload's the same and the population's the same. So even though our town may not be called Putney or our town may not be called Guilford, they still look similar. Guilford has a town clerk treasurer that does both jobs with a 10-hour-a-week assistant. Putney has a town clerk and a town treasurer. Neither one of them have assistants. Dummerston, I can't remember. But that's why we made the decisions that we made. Our town clerk has a part-time person. That's more staff than any of the other towns that are the same size in our region. No one cut budgets because it was fun to cut budgets. We cut budgets because we were hearing from the taxpayers that they were concerned about their future. We can't, a year later, go back to everything we cut last year. And there is a wonderful mentoring program for new town clerks. What happened in the past in our town office is different than what's happening today in our town office, and we all know that. But what's happening in our town is different than what happened last year. So if our town clerk decides to retire, or if her assistant retires, she can train an assistant. If she decides to retire, there's a mentoring program. And every single election year, every town meeting in this state, there's a new town clerk elected that didn't have any experience. And that's why they have this mentoring program for them. Now, we can either pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and continue to our future, or we can go back to the kind of budget we had. That's totally up to you.
Further discussion on the Frost Amendment, Mr. Unruh?
Call the question.
Second. Moved and seconded that we cease debate on the Frost Amendment proposal. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've ceased debate. Again, the proposal of amendment by Mrs. Frost is to add $15,000 to the town clerk's budget for a total line item of $108,124. All those in favor of the proposal of amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. You've rejected the amendment proposal. Further discussion on Article 7. Mrs. Rasmussen, you may call the question. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. We cease debate on Article 7. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've ceased debate on Article 7. Now, Article 7, as read and amended, includes the amendment passed by Mr. Dio. So if you could give me the new numbers, Mrs. Turnley, I just want to make sure that we have this correct.
1 second.
And a moment's peace while we get the numbers correct. Mrs. Turnley, continue, please.
Yes, it should read, shall the voters authorize a total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,105,574, less estimated income of $225,000, of which $1,722,770.44.
And how many cents?
44.
Okay.
Be raised by taxes, $70,000 by non-tax revenues, and $87,803.99 by prior year surplus.
All right, so the article as amended reads that the town authorize a total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,105,574, less estimated income of $225,000, of which $1,722,770.44 be raised by taxes, $70,000 by non-tax revenue, $87,803.99 by prior year surplus. Do I have that correct?
The first figure, the $2,105,574,
yes,
and 40 cents.
And 40 cents.
Yeah.
Okay, well, make sure we get that 40 cents.
Yes.
All those in favor of Article 7 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 7, your town budget. We move ahead to Article 15, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes for the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Is there a motion? Mr. Dunkley.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund.
Moved and seconded, the town appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 15 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 15. We move to Article 16. Shall voters appropriate the sum of $11,360 to be raised by taxes to support the following in their designated amounts: the current $600, Green Mountain RSVP $510, Senior Solutions $800, Visiting Nurse and Hospice for Vermont and New Hampshire $6,500, Women's Freedom Center $850, Southeastern Vermont Community Action $2,100. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunkley.
I move the town appropriate the sum of $11,360 to be raised by taxes to support the following in the designated amounts: the current $600, Green Mountain RSVP $510, Senior Solutions $800, the visiting nurse and hospice for Vermont, New Hampshire, $6,500. The Women's Freedom Center, $850. Southeastern Vermont Community Action, $2,100.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that the town appropriate the sum of $11,360 to be raised by taxes to support the following in their designated amounts, and I'll dispense with a reading of those items. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 16 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 16. Article 17 calls for, shall the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Town of Vernon James Cusick Scholarship Fund. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunkley.
I move the town appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Town of Vernon James Cusick Scholarship Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, the town appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Town of Vernon James Cusick Scholarship Fund. Do we have discussion on the motion? Mrs. Pereira.
I really just needed to stand. No, that's not true. My question is this, since we have a smaller amount of kids in school now, do we still need that much money for the kids that are coming through the high schools now, and if there's another way to save money?
The select board and or anyone else associated with the fund would be queried. Mrs. Harris.
You can always amend that amount. You can always amend that amount.
Further discussion on the motion. Back to the room. I believe that is Mr. Hicks.
Yes, just a question to the treasurer. What is the current balance in the James Cusick Scholarship Fund?
The treasurer is queried.
The balance is $77,901.64 currently.
And how much was dispersed this year?
$40,000.
Is that, it's basically we do $40,000 a year. We seem to be having done that.
Yes.
So 40 kids get $1,000 to go to college.
Not necessarily. This year it was less than 40 kids. It was like 37 or 35.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion on the article. Gentlemen, a couple of rows in front of Mr. Hicks.
David Parsons. Some of you may not know me, but I've been in town for 3 years here. I have one college-age son, and my daughter's a senior in high school. And to be honest, I look at this with the requirements of it, and we're funding it pretty much fully every year through taxes, as myself being robbed by the town. My kids are not eligible for the scholarship, but I pay the same $40,000 that's put in every year that we spend every year on the scholarship money. So I'm urging a no vote on this with the times coming on, and it really is insulting to new residents that the kids are not in the school system for 5 years, but we still have to pay the taxes on them.
Further discussion on the article. Mrs. Gardner.
Hi, Mary Ann Gardner. I don't have any senior citizens in my family, and I don't have any problem with funding that. I haven't had, luckily, to use the ambulance or the fire department. I don't have any problem using that. I think it's important that kids today get college educations. $1,000 is not a lot. Perhaps the treasurer could tell us how much per household that would cost us. And it's a huge benefit to the kids in Vernon who are able to utilize that.
The treasurer is queried if she so chooses. Just one moment while they run the numbers. Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley, on a $100,000 home, it would cost $6.88.
Thank you. Further discussion on the article, Mr. Gall.
Yeah, Bruce Gall. Just curious, if we already have $77,000 in there, why do we need to raise another 40 now? We have almost 2 years' worth of scholarships already in there.
The select board or anyone else associated with the fund is queried, if they so choose. Mrs. Howe.
I believe, and the treasurer can answer that, but I believe that it really isn't 77,000 in there. The kids have already received the money, so that is now not a true figure at this time, if I'm correct.
That's correct. It's $40,000 less.
Further discussion on the proposed article. I thought I saw a voter card in the back of the room. That Mrs. Curran back there?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate that. My name is Beverly
Mr.
Curran.
Arsenault.
Pardon me?
Mr. Arsenault.
Mr.
I just play the guy on the radio.
I know you just play the guy on the radio. My name is Beverly Current, and I'm a resident and have been for a while. My daughter used the James Cusick Scholarship Fund. I strongly support it. I want my taxes to pay for it. If your children have an opportunity to use it, use it. And that's really the bottom line.
Thank you. Further discussion on the article. Mr. Dunkley.
Interest in full disclosure, as a college-age student, I was a recipient of the scholarship. I guess I have some mixed emotions as a taxpayer while I was a recipient. I'm not sure, and I firmly believe in investing in education, but the number of people such as myself that were recipients, they're not in Vermont anymore, and they're not in this town. But anyway, I just express, I have some mixed emotions about it. I think there will come a point where this would be one of the things that we will not have the funds to continue to support. We do today, but in the future, I think we need to think about it.
Further discussion on Article 17. Voter card up front.
Elaine Dietrich, I think it's a good thing that the town does this. I agree with the gentleman whose children did not go through the Vernon school system. I have a son who is going to be starting school in September. He did not have the benefit of the Vernon school system. He did have a good education. But we have paid taxes in this town for 11 years, and he's not going to be able to have the benefit of this scholarship fund. So I think that maybe can we change some of the rules that it's open for taxpayers?
Mrs. Harris.
You've lived in town for 11 years? Then he was eligible to attend school for 6 of those years, so he's eligible for this scholarship, unless he's been out of school more than 6 years.
Ma'am, you have the floor again.
Yeah, he's in his early 30s, and he's done some education, and now he wants to go back and get a BA. So yeah, he's been out of school for more than 6 years, but still, we are, we have paid taxes in this town. And I think we should support the seniors, and I think we should I agree with supporting the police force and the fire department. But this is one of the benefits of living in Vernon that I would very much appreciate being able to take advantage of.
Mrs. Harris, one more response.
Okay, and the response to changing the rules, you'd have to have that on the next year's town warning. We can't change them tonight. It has to be by an article.
Further discussion on Article number 17, card in the center of the room. your card up so we can concede. Thank you.
Karen Gilbert, I call the question.
Moved and seconded, we cease debate. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've ceased debate. Again, the question is that the town appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Town of Vernon James Cusick Scholarship Fund. All those in favor of Article 17 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 17. We move to another page in my copy of the town report and to Article number 18. Shall the voters approve the Vernon capital plan as presented in the annual report? The town is free to add, delete, or modify any individual item from a proposed plan by amendment under this article. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Rasmussen.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve the Vernon capital plan as presented in the annual report. The town is free to add, delete, or modify any individual item from the proposed plan by amendment under this article.
Is there a second? Yes. Moved and seconded, the town approve the Vernon capital plan as presented in the annual report. The town is free to add, delete, or modify any individual item from a proposed plan by amendment under the article. Discussion on the motion. Back of the room, Mr. Gassett.
Bill Gassett. Is there anyone here from Finance Committee to speak to this?
Anyone from the Finance Committee in the hall able to respond to Mr. Gassett? Well, you have a question, then Mr. Sherlin is in the front of the room able to respond if you have a question.
Well, it's pretty clear if you go to page 7 in our town report exactly what the rules are and how the meetings will be held. And I'd like I don't want to bore the crew by reading all of this, but I want to know, did they follow the procedures outlined in that? Did they have the meetings? Did they do the town warnings?
There is a microphone coming to you. The Finance Committee is interrogated.
We didn't really have a Finance Committee this year. And last year, we had several meetings that were called and warned, and people didn't show up to them. So, capital plan is what the capital plan is. I don't know if that answers your question. We can't do much if people choose not to come to the meeting. For whatever reason, they choose not to show.
Mr. Gassett?
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
So how were the numbers, if you didn't have a meeting and nobody came, how were the numbers arrived at?
The numbers were already plugged in in previous years, numbers were already plugged in and going forward. So if there was a question, department heads have the ability to look at that. It's then given to the select board and they approve what is there.
I have one more question.
It's their select board's ultimate responsibility. We just kind of have done the legwork for them.
If I read the rules correctly, this has to be approved by the town, to be a legitimate funding and expenditure. Is that not correct?
The capital plan? Correct.
So,
but it's the select board's responsibility to do the capital plan, ultimately. This financial advisory committee is only doing legwork for them.
but you're asking the town to approve a pretty serious number that really has not met the legal requirements as outlined in this article right here, correct?
Those numbers have been plugged in for several years.
I know, but that's not the information.
Point of order has been called. Do you have a further question, or is this a dialogue, Mr. Gassett?
Okay, my question is, how can we approve a plan that hasn't met the legal requirements? Period.
Thank you. Is there someone who'd like to respond? Mrs. Harrison.
Well, I don't know if it's exactly a response, but when the warning went to VLCT's legal staff, evidently the capital plan doesn't need to be approved by the town. So So, but we've already always done it by tradition. So I don't know, Dale, what the true answer would be, but according to the legal up there, they said it didn't have to be. And I can show you that sometime.
Further discussion on the proposed article, article number 18, Mrs. Gassett.
What we're referring to is on page 7 of your town report. And if you look to the right side of the page, it says establishing the plan.
Make sure you speak up a little bit.
Okay, sorry. It shows the policy on the administration of the capital plan on that page. These procedures were voted on by this town to be followed for the capital plan. And it says in here that you're supposed to have a warned hearing before you put money into an article to be approved by us, and that's what we're trying to understand. This policy that's outlined on this page says the Finance Committee shall meet every year, go over the whole capital plan, add, delete, or modify, go to the select board at a regular select board meeting, present it, and then after that's approved, you'll have a public hearing for the townspeople to come to ask questions and talk about it, and then you are able to put on a warning, put an article on the warning for town meeting. So unless these rules have changed somewhere and we missed something, that's what we're asking. Why are these rules listed this way, and were they followed? And if they weren't, how can we be having an article asking for money?
The select board is queried. Mrs. Howard.
You have to understand, we have no capital plan committee. Nobody volunteers to help. We have one person that at least will give her time to do this. She brought what she had from last year that everybody voted on last year. That's what we're presenting now. It is up to you whether you want to go forward with it or not. That's up to you. These figures are the same as last year. Nothing was increased. Right?
Mr. Ball.
Mike Ball. I also served on the Financial Advisory Committee to the Select Board for some time. It's important to understand that this capital plan is a tool to make sure that department heads get the capital items that they need to do their job. It is the responsibility of the supervisors, the department heads that need this equipment to make sure that the numbers in here are going to meet their needs at the time of the need year itself. So what you don't want to do is, you don't want to basically be lackadaisical and have something come up that's going to be $100,000 short. Because you're not going to, we as the townspeople are not going to approve a $100,000 increment to basically slam the capital plan. It's an incremental funding of the capital plan to satisfy the department head's needs. This was established, it's moving through. All we're doing and all that the select board did was incrementally fund that line, each line item, to make sure at the end, at the need year, the amount of money is there. So we approved it last year. All we're doing is going through forward this year to meet that need. It's just math. If nothing changed, and as far as the department head's needs, we're just funding what was decided a long time ago.
Mrs. O'Donnell.
May I call the question, Mr. Moderator?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we cease debate on this article. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You cease debate on Article 17. Again, the question, make that Article 18, excuse me. Again, the question is that the town approve the capital plan as presented in the annual report. The town is free to add, delete, or modify any individual item from the proposed plan by amendment under the article. All those in favor of Article 18, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 18. We move to Article 19. Shall the voters approve $237,800 to be expended for items approved for purchase of the capital plan, of which $220,001.58 shall be raised by taxes, $17,798.42 from the capital fund. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. Rasmussen.
I move the town appropriate $237,800 to be expended for items approved for purchase in the capital plan, of which $220,001.58 shall be raised by taxes and $17,798.42 from the capital fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the town appropriate $237,800 to be expended for items approved for purchase of the capital plan, of which $220,001.58 shall be raised by taxes, $17,798.42 from the capital fund. Discussion on the motion. Back of the room, Mr. Hicks.
Just a clarification to point out, in the previous discussion, it was said that there had been no changes. This was just a continuation of appropriations that had already been discussed. In fact, there were a couple. I am in favor of these, so I'm not arguing the issue, but I do want to point out that the town van line, there's a new addition of $12,500, and the tractor and rotary mower went from $10,714 to $67,000. I was at the meeting where the capital plan was discussed and projected and talked about, and in fact, the idea of having the rotary mower was a new instrument because the old one didn't do the job as well as was necessary, and we needed a new one to be able to reach further over. And there was a whole lot of discussion about why we only cut the side of the road once a year as opposed to two. So I just wanted to clarify that, contrary to what was just previously said, there have been additions.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article number 19? Mrs. Gassett.
I don't want to be difficult, but you didn't answer my question. There's very clear rules about the capital plan written in the policy. Why are we not?
Mrs. Rasmussen,
Are we not
recognized,
following
please?
them for some reason? I'm just trying to understand it. Please help me understand.
The select board is interrogated. Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. We can't follow those rules if we can't get people who will agree to volunteer to be on the finance committee. We can't corral people and force them to do so.
Wait till she's through.
Please, I'm not done yet. It would be very nice, I would ask anybody who's in the audience if they'd like to be on the finance committee, that would be terrific.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 19, Mr. Unruh, I saw you raise your voter card.
Call the question.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, we cease debate on Article 19. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You cease debate. Again, the question is that the town appropriate $237,800 to be expended for items approved for purchase in the capital plan, of which $220,001.58 shall be raised by taxes, $17,798.42 from the capital fund. All those in favor of Article 19 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 19. We move to Article 20. Shall the voters appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town road upgrading fund? Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. Rasmussen.
I move the town appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town road upgrading fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the town appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town road upgrading fund.
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. Rasmussen.
I move to amend that amount to $150,000. The town road commissioner has gotten some estimates on some road increases, some road upgrades that need to happen during the course of this year, including...
You need to really get that microphone on and be up close with it, ma'am. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
I've moved to amend that to $150,000. The road commissioner has given us some information about road upgrading that needs to be completed this year, including hopefully Sac Road. And so we are asking for an additional $50,000 for road upgrading during this year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the bottom line on Article 20 be increased to $150,000. Mrs. Rasmussen, do you wish to speak further to your proposal of amendment?
Only to say that we just received the estimates for these road upgradings from the road commissioner. If you would like to speak to that, that would be great.
Mr. Walker, you're recognized.
Okay, on the first one, it goes back last year, Central Park box culvert. As of July 1st, we are in a whole new standards for replacing stuff. We can no longer pump the water around, and any temporary that's put in has to be the same size as the culvert being replaced. We have gone, we talked to all the homeowners, and we're going to go through Washburn Way, but we're still waiting back to hear from the state to make sure we can do it. But our cost went from $300,000 up to $480,000 on that. So we want to make sure the $100,000 is in there to cover that. And the board was approached by people on Sac Road about getting it surveyed so we can start getting it widen out for them out there. And that would be for the $50,000. And that will be a box culvert, and that's going to be doing the survey out through doing that for now.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment to Article number 20. Mr. Hicks.
Sorry, just to query the town treasurer, what is the current balance for the town road upgrading fund?
The treasurer is interrogated, and we'll get a microphone to you as quickly as possible.
Cindy Turnley, the current balance is $261,680.92.
All right, further discussion on Article number 20 on the amendment proposal to Article number 20. Seeing none, all those in favor of the proposal of amendment changing the bottom line on this article to $150,000, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The article has been amended. The main article now reads that the town appropriate $150,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town road upgrading fund. All those in further discussion officially on Article 20. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 20 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 20. Let's go to Article 21. Shall the voters appropriate $50,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the professional services fund?
Mr.
Motion. Mrs. O'Donnell.
I move that the town appropriate $50,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the professional services fund.
Moved and seconded that the town appropriate $50,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the professional services fund. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. O'Donnell.
We talked to the listers, and that was their suggestion of, we still have negotiations, a longer-term negotiation with Entergy, and we still have a negotiation with Velco, Transco. You know, this Transco and TransCanada, it's crazy. We have finished our negotiations with TransCanada, and I really want to commend the listers for the awesome job they did, because we could have, as a town, had to pay back millions of dollars, and they were awesome, so I thank them very much. But we still have our negotiation with what was known as Velco, and a long-term negotiation with Vermont Yankee, so we are going to have to use our attorney and Skip Sansucci's help in both of those negotiations, so we want to increase the fund.
Further discussion, Article 21. And back of the room, Mr. Hicks, I believe that is.
Same question.
What's the current balance?
The current balance, Mrs. Turnley, we will get the other microphone to you.
Cindy Turnley, the current balance is $138,291.08.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 21. Seeing none, again, the article reads that the town appropriate $50,000 to be raised by taxes for the Professional Services Fund. All those in favor of Article 21 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We passed Article 21. We go to Article 22. Shall the voters approve $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the reappraisal fund? Is there a motion?
Yes, there is.
Mrs. O'Donnell.
I move that the town appropriate $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the reappraisal fund.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. The town appropriate $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the reappraisal fund. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 22 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 22. We move to Article 23. Shall the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 2 installments, the due dates being September 17th, 2015 and February 16th of 2016. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. O'Donnell.
I move that the town authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 2 installments with due dates being September 17, 2015 and February 16, 2016.
Moved and seconded that the town authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 2 installments. Due dates being September 17th, 2015 and February 16th, 2016. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 23 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 23. We go to Article 24 to transact any non-binding business that may lawfully come before said meeting. Any discussion is not binding under this article. We'll go to the front of the room first of all.
Ronna Zlakaver, it's just 3 items of information. Recently, we had an informational meeting with the Vermont Council on Rural Development, and I just want to say that the Select Board has sent a letter requesting that they work with us in the future, and we are waiting to hear from them. I also want to announce that this coming Saturday, there will be an author talk at the library at 1 p.m. It's March 7th. It will be Elizabeth McAllister talking about a book she wrote called Reckoning at Heart's Pass. It's a suspense. It's about a retired FBI agent who hikes the Pacific Crest Trail and some adventures that he experiences along the way. In the future, we will be having other author talks at the library, one in May, and then we'll have the summer off, and then we'll start up again in September. Stay tuned. It will be announced in the community, the Vernon Community Newsletter, and that's the next announcement. There are sign-up sheets if you haven't already signed up. The email address, it's not a website, it's an email address. Vernon, news, the number 4, vernon@gmail.com. Thank you.
Further discussion under Article 24, other business. Mrs. O'Donnell.
Mr. Moderator, I actually have 2 things I'd like to talk about. First off, I see that our road guys are here, and I didn't realize that they were here. I thought they were out on the road, but I would just like to make a comment about the phenomenal job they've done this winter. This has been an extremely difficult winter. And the second thing I'd like to say is we have 2 people leaving us. As we all know, Sally has stepped down from her job as treasurer because of family commitments and time. And I, on behalf of the board, would like to commend her for the phenomenal job that she has done for the past, I don't even remember how many years, because I'm getting so old, it's hard to remember them. But I'm really happy to hear that she's going to stay on in a part-time basis. But we want to, on behalf of the town, thank you very much for the job.
Let's get a microphone sounding, please. Want everybody to hear this.
I just want to say that it's been my great pleasure to work for the town, and I've really enjoyed seeing all of you. I hope that when you've come into the office, you've left knowing that you've been cared about, taken care of, appreciated, and that you've left with a smile. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Further discussion on Article 24 of the
I'm
business?
not done yet, Mr.
You're not done
Moderator.
yet? One
No,
second.
I'm sorry. Also, we have leaving tonight Janet Rasmussen, who has served the select board for 2 years and has been a phenomenal asset. I'm happy to say that she is going to stay on the planning committee and the tax commission. So I really thank her for the great work that she's done, and we're really going to miss her, so thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. It's been, I thank everybody who voted for me. I have done my best the last 2 years. It's been very difficult at some times. It's been very rewarding at other times. But I would like to leave you with 2 things. Please, please don't take your eye off the ball in terms of taxes. There are issues that are so important in this town that we really have to never stop thinking about. At least I know, because I can't. And the other is, there has been a lot of infighting, there have been issues, there have been a lot of accusations thrown around over the past year. We need to stop, and we need to stop now because we have way, way too many important issues that have to be decided, and they have to be decided soon or now. But thank you very much for the opportunity. I truly appreciate it.
Further discussion on Article 24, Mrs. Mosley?
This is, as Joe Rivera, I think, used to say, deja vu all over again. When I stood at this article last year asking about the progress on the website, and as far as I know, I'd like to hear where does that stand now. I figure that we still have none a year later.
The select board is queried, Mrs. O'Donnell?
We actually, and I think you know this, Barbara, we shut the website down a few months back, well, actually, probably somewhere in the middle of the legislature last year, because the legislature passed a law mandating that any meetings that are held have to be put on the website within 5 days. And it's a pretty restrictive legislation that's passed, and the legislature is actually dealing with it again this year. So we shut the website down until the legislation has been changed. Mostly because we don't have the manpower to make sure that those minutes are up within that timely a manner, and to hire a part-time person to watch the website was something that just wasn't feasible for this town. So when the legislation is changed, it's easier to deal with, then we will put the website back up again.
Further discussion, Article 24, anything non-binding, Mrs. Scott?
I have a comment about the vote we had yesterday for the auditors and some of the comments from our select board. I got a copy of a memo today that the select board issued to the auditors telling them that they did not need to do an auditor's report. And it's very disheartening, and it really hurts the credibility of the select board, because we did a town vote, and the information that was given to 220 people was that you did not issue this memo, and you did. And I find
excuse
that
me,
very
Mr. Moderator.
Well, it's very disheartening and it hurts the credibility. And I agree there's a huge disconnect in this town between the select board, the elected officials, and the town people. And this is another example of it. You issued this memo and you said yesterday specifically that you did not.
Mr. Moderator, may I address that? Number one, I did not issue
Please go
that
ahead.
memo. It came from the clerk of the Vernon Select Board, not from me. Number two, it's the last sentence of many emails that went back and forth. We were looking for reports from the auditors and town clerk, and we were told that they would do their own. So when the clerk of the board had to send out memos for all the people who hadn't issued their reports yet, we told her if the auditors didn't want to, if we're going to issue a report, to just forget it. So you can't, and therein lies the problem, because you take a little bit of something that happens and twist it to something that it isn't. And you're not even listening to my answer anyway, so there's really no sense to even having this discussion.
Further discussion, Article number 24, Mr. Hicks.
I think that Peggy hit a very important point about having future members of the town becoming involved in our town. We are clearly, from my point of view, an aging population, and we needed to find a way to get the young kids involved in our town. I'm hoping, I suggested this before indirectly to the town select board, but I'm hoping that we can put together a small fund, maybe $20,000, for internships in the summer for high school kids to work in the various departments of the town, in the listers, in the select boards, in the treasurer's office, in whichever ones they can legally work on, for 10 hours a week, 25 hours a week. It would cost $2,500 a kid. For 10 weeks, we would start introducing young people to our town and to how the town works. It's a tiny amount of money to invest in our future, and I seriously hope that the select board and other people in the town will seriously consider such an enterprise.
Further discussion under Article 24. Mrs. O'Donnell.
Question, Mr. Moderator?
You mean you'd like to move to adjourn?
I would love to move to adjourn before the road's going to get worse.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, we close the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Good night, everybody.